Staggering number of children exposed to violence in Chicago. New study says, Chicago over the 4th of July holiday, Felix Kumwa brought the children he mentors to a festival where a law enforcement exhibit allowed visitors to sit in a squad car, try on police gear and chat with officers. But the fireworks, the presence of the officers and the sight of their weapons all scared the children, Kumwa said. They mistook the fire. Kumwa works for the Friends of the Children program, mentoring at-risk kids in Chicago's Austin and North Lawndale areas, which have experienced more homicides in recent years than almost every other community area in the city. And while it's long been known that exposure to violence and trauma even indirectly has a negative effect on children, especially before the critical under age 5 stage, a new analysis by the Erickson Institute suggests the problem might be getting worse in Chicago. The institute found that even while the number of homicides in Chicago and its population dropped over the last few years, the number of children under the age of 5 living in high homicide areas got bigger. In fact, about 60% of Chicago's youngest children lived in community areas where 91% of homicides took place, according to the analysis. The institute looked at 3 years of City of Chicago crime data and census demographic reports to estimate the number of children under the age of 5 living in community areas with a greater than median number of homicides. The association, officials with the Chicago-based Erickson Institute, which focuses on early child development, said their report underscores the need to address not just the roots of community violence but the trauma it causes for children who live in those areas. President and CEO, and the trend is heading in the wrong direction, said Christina Pacion-Zayas, Associate Vice President of Policy for the Institute. When the percentage of the city's population of children under the age of 5 who live in areas with above median number of homicides grew from about 54% during 2016 to 60% in 2018, Pacion-Zayas said. For Friends of the Children, that intervention is done through long-term mentoring of some of the city's most vulnerable children. Each mentor exposure to violence that early in life can have lifelong effects because so much of a child's development happens in the first 5 years. Children can enter kindergarten having already learned how to settle disputes with violence, Hasikloe and Kumwa said. Friends of the Children, there. Erickson officials noted that exposure to violence doesn't necessarily mean eyewitnessing it, as young children are also affected by how their parents or other adults around them respond to violence. Brad Stolbach, a professor of pediatrics at the University of Chicago who's worked with childhood trauma patients for 2 decades, noted that the discussion of those affected by homicide often stops with the victims and their immediate family. Homicide. The city had 577 homicides in 2018, 672 in 2017 and close to 800 in 2016, according to public city data. The increase in the amount of children exposed to homicides comes even though the city's population is dropping and total number of homicides are edging downward. About 12,000. The connection between early childhood adversity and negative health outcomes has been long known. A 1990 what? So, visit the Chicago Tribune ed.